Hello and welcome back to the United Nations of Horror. I am Jason, and I am here with the Doctor of Horror himself, Doctor of really all film, honestly, and that is Mark Kane. Mark, how are you, sir?
Pretty good. I'm raring to go on this film, Evil Dead Rise, right?
Evil Dead Rise.
It'd be fun to talk about this. And,
this is a good one, man, and, we kind of have been alternating a little bit between new horror and old horror, and I feel like it's good because we see a lot of the classics, but then we talk about current stuff as well, which is, it keeps us up to date, keeps us young, right?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's nice to vary it. Also, recently we've had some more comedy horror kind of films, and this is not that. Even that, having said that, Evil Dead's always got a weird comic element, hasn't it? Always. That's part of its charm.
Before we get to anything else, Mark, let me ask you, when did you first come to Evil Dead? Because I don't know that we've discussed a lot of Evil Dead. I know we discussed some Ash versus Evil Dead a little bit in previous episodes, but I don't think we've discussed the kind of first Evil Dead films too much. So when did you first come to this?
Well, I came to the Evil Dead, the first film, quite late because it was a video nasty. You couldn't get it in the UK. It was one on the video nasty banned list. And we saw clips of it, which made it look really awesome, actually. I mean, really awesome.
Oh, I bet.
And it lived up to it, I have to say. So it was quite late, but I must have seen it on video, I would say, late 80s, early 90s. So quite late after it had been first. Because what was it, 83? Something like that?
Yeah, I think the first one, the first one was 81, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh my God, I definitely saw it way after that. I think I may have even seen the Evil Dead 2 before Evil Dead because you could. And I really, really dig the Evil Dead. In fact, I remember having it on VHS. I had a VHS copy of it.
Oh, nice.
I bought from somewhere because it wasn't selling in the UK. Evil Dead 2 wasn't banned, so you could buy it, but Evil Dead was. So I came via Evil Dead 2. Then, so the Evil Dead, there's several films, because you don't get to see them, they build up a figure in your mind of, is it going to live up to this? And I have to say, there's probably 3 films that were like that for me, which when I got to saw them, it's like, wow, yeah, man, these are good. Evil Dead, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Clockwork Orange, which was not available in the UK for many. In fact, it only became available after Stanley Kubrick died, so not that long ago. You could, I mean, you could import it. Because DVDs, the change of format from VHS to DVDs kind of made it much easier to get films from overseas. Because multi-region players were relatively inexpensive. Multi-region VHSs were rare, man. You just did not. I had one, but they were rare. And weirdly, I think I only had 3 tapes that were NTSC, the American format.
Oh, yeah.
So I spent all this money on a multi-region player, but only had a few films for VHS, that is. Whereas DVD, much easier.
Yeah, I definitely think DVD sort of changed the game, right?
I think government stopped trying to censor stuff across borders at that point. It was like, well, we cannot stop the flow of these, discs coming across, coming through customs. We can't possibly, we could try, but most of it's going to get through. So you could order Clockwork Orange or whatever, and get it. So it became a lot easier at that point. I do remember seeing Ash versus the Evil Dead, or Evil Dead 3, Army of Darkness, in the cinema. I saw that in the cinema. So and I was happy. I was very happy when that came to the cinema. I really enjoyed that film. Because they got goofy, those first 3 got goofier and goofier. And, that kind of propagated through into Ash versus Evil Dead, didn't it, really?
It did, absolutely.
So, yeah, Evil Dead, I came to quite late in the game, and I wasn't disappointed when I saw it. It's still, it's kind of amateurish in places, but it has a power, for sure. There's a reason people talk about the Evil Dead. One of the things I always liked about the Evil Dead is how much more fun the people get when they become Deadites compared to when they're... compared to the woman in Army of Darkness, when she's not a Deadite, she's very prim and proper. But as soon as she gets, I may be bad, but I feel good, and all that kind of stuff, right?
It's over the top.
Yeah, there's all that, and that's carried on into this film as well. I mean, that's not particularly a spoiler. There was elements of that, and we saw it again in Ash vs Evil Dead, right? And a little, not so much, but a little in the fourth installment, the 2013 redo of the Evil Dead. There was a little humour, but that was a much more grim affair, much closer to the first film than Evil Dead 2 and 3, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to point out, because this film really does sort of take quite a bit of nods from that film and the first film, which I do think the first film is still, even after all these years, incredibly scary, which that was the last one I came to. I saw them sort of, not in reverse order, but I saw the third one first, and then I saw the first Evil Dead, and then the second Evil Dead much later. So, and this was, early 2000s when I'm seeing all this, so much later than you. But of course I was, there was no way my folks were going to let me see Evil Dead as a kid.
Yeah, I'm old, so these things are all. I was old when the Evil Dead came out. Well, not that old, but
that now.
I was, I was 16 when the Evil Dead came out. So, but it just wasn't available in the UK. It never got to the cinema, I don't think, or maybe it had a very brief run. But it just wasn't available. And when you see clips, I mean, there's some really sweaty bits in Evil Dead, and those were the clips they used to show on the TV, which means all you had was this one impression of this one scene that looked awesome.
Right.
Right. So there was that, right?
It didn't disappoint. Sam Raimi's original, man.
No. Yeah. There's not much of the Evil Dead I don't like. I like Ash versus the Evil Dead, which is the funny side of the Evil Dead.
For sure.
I like things like the fourth film and this one, which is the more serious side of the Evil Dead.
Yeah, I don't know if I've mentioned it before, but I think Ash vs. Evil Dead is probably now my favorite TV series. I mean, I love it that much.
Yeah, it's on Stars, isn't it? It's really, really cool. And why they discontinued it, I don't know. But I got to rewatch. I haven't rewatched it in a while, so it's probably due a watch.
I feel like it's infinitely rewatchable. I mean, the only thing I can say is like that first episode, the CG effects are pretty rough, but in many ways, that sort of works for Evil Dead, I feel like.
Yeah, but there's also things like the little Ash doll. This is amazing. And
things like yes. Just terrific. But we could talk about Evil Dead all day. Should we get to some feedback on Evil Dead Rise before we
I did post in the UNH Facebook group, our Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/UN of Horror. For anyone not joined, come join us. One of us.
Yes.
I posted a note mentioning we were recording today and got a little feedback. First, we got is from Tish Greer. Hi, Tish.
How's it going, Tish?
Who said, I saw it and I liked it. It was a great roller coaster ride of a movie. The opening was fabulous. I like the original So, how about that?
Interesting.
Never got into the cult of Ash. Wow. So I didn't bring the baggage with me into this. I like that the Evil Dead were horribly evil. Yeah. That's when they were the best. Because fair enough. In like Ash, Army of Darkness, they're kind of goons, aren't they? They're silly goons. There's some of that. There's elements of that in this, but I felt that they synthesized a lot of the elements from the different films quite well in this last one. That's one of its great things. Anyway, second bit of feedback was from Kevin Matthews. Hi, Kevin, friend of the show.
Kevin, how are you?
Loved it, he says.
Yes.
I think it had the great mix of mad horrors and some, and he emphasizes some, dark humor throughout. I thought the cast all did solid work, especially Alyssa Sutherland in her main role. And it really proved that the Evil Dead series doesn't need to be tied to either A Cabin in the Woods or the mighty Bruce Campbell. I have to say, they seem to be very, very good at casting in these Evil Dead films.
They do, man. Wow.
Was it Jane Levy in hold on, I'm just going to look it up. In 2013 once. She was amazing.
She was.
Jane Levy. She was so good in that, and they're pretty good in this film too. So, they cast well in these films, I have to say.
Yeah, you can tell that they... I mean, I know Sam Raimi, he's a producer, Bruce Campbell as well. I don't know if they have a lot of say in the casting, but yeah, I agree with you. Really well cast. And in this new film, it's interesting. I was just doing some research, and I believe it's the main actress is from Australia, if I'm not mistaken. And so,
really?
Yeah, a lot of Australian kind of influence. I believe the director also is from Australia, if I'm not mistaken, too.
Okay.
But it was filmed in New Zealand, so we got some Lord of the Rings going there. And I don't know what it is about films from New Zealand, Mark, but they all just seem to turn out really well, from what I've seen, anyway. But sorry, go on. I didn't.
Okay, actually, the director's from Ireland. Just to pick you
Ireland.
up on
I'm
that.
sorry,
but I haven't seen any of his other things. I have not seen any of his other stuff, but I think he did a great job. I think he did a great job. Anyway, to carry on with the feedback. Despite the criticisms I've seen from others, I haven't seen any myself because I don't really care what other people think. But anyway, despite the criticisms I've seen from others. I would highly recommend. I have seen from others. I would highly recommend this to fans of the franchise. It has the camera work you expect, and impressive rare special effects, some familiar weaponry, and moments that made most people generally wince and/or laugh at the on-screen insanity. If Cronin has plans for another 1 or 2 installments, then I'll be keen to see what he gives us next. Yes, bang up job from Lee Cronin, I have to say.
Absolutely.
So that was our feedback. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Tish. Thanks, Kevin.
We appreciate it, guys, and we always love hearing from you guys.
Nothing to disagree with there at all, really.
I think it's interesting that Tish sort of comes into it with sort of not a fangirl or fanboy perspective, because I think most of us, Mark, are kind of like, oh man, we love Evil Dead, So it's kind of nice to hear a point of view from someone who's not so invested in the films, I think.
I have to say,
really
I
cool.
wasn't even aware this film was coming, and I was at the cinema watching. I'm trying to remember what I went to see. It could have been like Maverick or something like that. Top Gun Maverick. And the trailer came on, and I didn't know what the trailer was. They didn't say, but you saw this strange-looking woman doing this weird, like children's nursery rhyme, and I instantly thought, "This is the Evil Dead." And it was, you kind of know the vibe with the Evil Dead. So yes, that's how I came out, and I didn't know when it was coming out, and it was good to see though. I really, really enjoyed it. I don't go to the cinema much, but I make the effort now and again, and I have to say I did enjoy this one. Right, what we'll do is let's just talk about high level thoughts. I think we've covered a bit already, but high level thoughts, and then we'll get into spoiler territory. How about that?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
So I'm happy to go first. Don't mind.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
All right then. I really enjoyed this. It wasn't my favourite in the franchise. In fact, it was probably my least favourite, but I really like the other 4. I think they're great films. 2 is peerless. But 1, 3 and 4 are really solid, interesting films. So when I say this is my least favourite, I still really like it. I think this was a solid, fun film. Pleased to see it. Kept the vibe. Didn't fall off the cliff in any way. Good, solid sequel. Redo. Whatever you want to call it, because it was the same universe as the others without any of the characters, apart from possibly a bit of voice work, which we'll talk about.
Yes, we have to get into that.
Yeah. There was lots of nods to the earlier films, which we'll get into the specifics of that in the spoiler section, which was a real pleasure and a bit of a treat for the fans and the people that watched the franchise for a long time. But you don't need to have seen any of those to enjoy this. This one stands alone and totally works. It doesn't rely on any full knowledge. Everything's there for you if you've never seen any of this, and it's fine, which is a good way to do it without being too hitting the nail on the head too directly. I think they did it well, and the cast was solid. And I felt they captured the vibe of the first film, the second film, the third film, and the fourth film, which is interesting to do that in this film. Anyway, that's my thoughts without spoilers.
I mean, I am definitely of the same mindset, Mark. I thought that they did a really good job, and it pays homage to the films without like. It's not like in your face, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's well done, and it's done in kind of a classy manner. I also thought the special effects. I'm not sure. I'm not. Let me try that again. I'm not sure how much CG was used, but if it was used, I could not tell. I mean, it all to me looked really good, really convincing, like really practical kind of stuff. I think it's interesting that this one, and this isn't a spoiler either, because you kind of know this from the trailers. It's interesting that this one takes place in a city rather than kind of a cabin in the woods. So I think it's interesting that they took it out of sort of that normal vibe, that normal location, because even in the 2013 film, it still took place, in a cabin in the woods.
Yeah. In many respects, I felt it could have, if they hadn't have stuck much more directly to the Evil Dead vibe, which they did, it would have started feeling a bit, I don't know, Resident Evil, Silent Hill.
Yeah,
because of the saying, right? But it didn't. It felt like Evil. There was one bit early on where I will talk about that in the spoiler section, but there was one bit early on I just want to mention that I was getting a slightly different vibe from it, but otherwise, the last two acts were full on Evil Dead for me. Yeah. Okay.
Sounds good.
Let's rate it now. So and then we'll get into spoilers. So what would you give this? Shall I go first? Do you want to go first?
Go ahead, please, by all means.
I give this a solid 7 out of 10, and I think it's closer to an 8 than a 6. However, I don't feel quite it was an 8 for me, but I really enjoyed it. I really liked it. I think if I watch it again, the rating may go up or it may go down. I don't know, or it may just stay the same. I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure. Exactly how I feel about it. I just had some interesting stuff that I feel that I might pick up more the second time, but I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, that's my rating.
Oh, very cool. No, that's high. If I'm going to do like out of 5, I got to give it probably a 4. I really, really enjoyed it. Like I was actually kind of blown away by it, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Yeah, surprisingly good, wasn't it? It was surprisingly good. And kind of memorable as well.
I like the 2013 film, but I like this one better, believe it or not. And I really liked the 2013 film a whole lot. Like I thought they did a great job on that one. Yeah. So, but yeah, man, just really solid. And it's nice to see good horror films made. We're very lucky to have so much great horror. We always talk about this every episode, but we have it on television, like a TV show format. We have great movies in horror coming out. So just, man, it's a good time to be a horror fan, Mark.
yeah, there's loads of good stuff. There's and there's straight horror and there's comedy horror, and they both kind of work, and it's great. Yes, really.
Not much of the comic elements here, though, right?
Some. In the Evil Dead mode, though, in the strict Evil Dead 1 mode.
Yeah,
that way.
Right, exactly.
I should have rated this 3.5, by the way. Yeah, I should have stuck to 5. I forgot we'd switched to a 5 as well.
Oh, no, we're still in the process, right?
Yeah. Okay. Right, so from this point on, there'll be spoilers. Okay?
Yes.
You have been warned. Indeed. Don't be listening to any records that you find in a disused cellar or base, whatever. Anyway, right.
That gets
starts
bad for
off with a cabin in the woods. We keep going about this, isn't it? But it actually starts with a cabin in the woods.
It does.
And it looks a bit like the Amityville house, a little version of that as well, which is weird.
You're right. Yeah, kind of does.
And it's basically a woman who doesn't really want to be around this douchebag who turns out to be the boyfriend of her sister, and her sister's kind of passed out and they don't know what's up with her, but it turns out she's evil deaded. And the boyfriend's got there's a quite good bait and switch at the beginning. We get the sweeping thing through the woods, which we often see with the Evil Dead, but when it resolves and it comes towards this woman and she screams, it's actually the douchebag flying his drone camera around.
I thought that was
great. It's bait and switch.
Very clever.
Yes, that did make me laugh. And she's saying, "You could take my head off with that," and he goes, "No, it just mess up your face." There's all this kind of dialogue.
A little prelude.
Anyway, yes, a prelude. Yeah, and various gory effects happen. We won't go into them specifically, but this like 3 people come a cropper, and there's one of them's possessed and rises out of this, goes into a lake, but then rises out of it, levitates out of it. As she rises out, we get the credits rise behind her, Evil Dead Rise.
Oh, great credits.
Yeah, cool. And it's like, then we cut to something else completely, and it's like, well, what's that got to do with anything? I kept thinking through the film, but you find out at the end.
I was wondering what was going on there too, because I honestly, as the film progressed, I sort of forgot about the part with the cabin until
near the end.
Then they came back to it. I was like, oh, okay, they did tie this up. Cool.
Yeah. Anyway, it turns out there's a woman who goes to visit her sister who has these older children. They're teens, basically, and a little girl. So there's 2 teens. Is it 2 teens? 2 teens and a little girl.
I think maybe the girl was like 14. Maybe the son, I'd say. He has his driver's license,
16,
so I'm going to say he's
17.
16. Yeah. And the girl's
the little girl,
younger.
Cassie. Yeah. And I have to say, they don't stint on the blood in this film at all. Which is very Evil Dead, right? That kind of happens.
Yeah, if you don't like gore, you will not like this film at all.
Yeah, one of the things that I have to say about the 2013 movie was I was impressed how much blood they managed to get on the screen. They have slightly less in this film, but they still have plenty of it. They have plenty of the old, fake blood.
There are gallons for sure.
Yeah, so basically, this girl goes to visit her sister. It turns out she's also pregnant. She's like a guitar tech person, isn't she? But everyone calls her a groupie.
Indeed.
And which is kind of funny, and she's not happy. But they live in this big LA apartment complex. It's a bit run down. And we meet some of the neighbours, and they're all right. They're nice people, fair enough. But then there's a bit of an earthquake. It's LA, right? And the kids are in the parking lot, and they find this weird room, don't they, that's been uncovered by the earthquake.
Yeah, they've gone to get pizza, I believe, and then
that's right. Yeah.
The boy can't resist. He's got to go down and check out the vault down there and see what he can find.
Yeah, and don't we see earlier he's like trying to do scratch records, isn't he? He's got a record player on vinyl. Yeah. That ties in nicely to the current thing about vinyl, doesn't it, as well?
It
somewhat.
Does. Yeah.
So he uncovers 3 old records from 1923 in a strange book, which they don't call the Necronomicon at all in this film, which is really weird. I
wonder if there's like a legal reason for that, because I noticed the same thing.
Well, the Necronomicon is actually, it's a famous work from, is it the Egyptians? But also the works of H.P. Lovecraft are often called the Necronomicon. So I don't know if that's something to do with it. But they call it the Naturum de Monto. Naturum de Monto, about demons.
Which we know what it is.
Anyway, he takes this book and these records up, and he's sort of saying, well, maybe we can sell it to help sort of mum, because she's a single mother.
The husband has recently left, right? And the kids are still obviously going through a lot of turmoil because of that, as is the mother. When the sister comes back, of course, and the sad thing is she doesn't even really know because she's been so caught up in her own life. So obviously she feels bad about the situation, but I think that a lot of that kind of, that kind of grief is common nowadays. And so it's interesting to kind of take a look at that and sort of see how it relates to the message of this film. I got to say, before we move on to the Necronomicon or whatever you want to call it, it looks great. Like they did
there's some great artwork, and the closing credits uses a lot of it, and it's kind of cool to watch the closing credits for that reason. There's some really interesting pictures in there. Some of them I'd have on my wall, some of them I definitely wouldn't, but it depends what it is.
Some of that art was freaking me out. I was oh man, because this film does get the horror elements right. Like it really worked for me. Like there were parts where I was tensing up, and I don't find that with a lot of horror now. Most of the time we've watched a lot of horror, right, Mark? So
yeah. No, this was effective. Yes, I've got to see some more, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be in my top 5 of the year. For horror, I'm pretty sure of that, but I'd have to see some more. And you know what that means when I say I need to see some more? You know what that means?
Indeed.
Yeah, I need to see some more. I need to try and actually watch some 2023 horror in 2023 and not wait for the next year and then have to cram them all.
Same here.
Yeah. So it turns out the record he puts on and listens to it is this priest talking about what. So it's kind of similar to the first film in that they revealed a tape, and the second film a tape, and the fourth. Sorry, what I'm saying is almost all the films apart from Army of Darkness. There's always a recording that gets played, which generates these Kandarian demons, the evil dead, the Deadites. Now apparently Bruce Campbell was a voice on the tape. I don't know if he was the main one or he's just one of the voices. Didn't really recognise him.
From what I've read, he was someone in the background that's like warning them. But I gotta tell you, I didn't.
Oh, that's right. It was supposed to be a Canon Ash, wasn't he? For Lost in Time, apparently.
I think so. Yeah, but I didn't notice at the time, like when I first watched it.
No,
I was just like, oh, it's some random
dude,
another priest warning him or something,
Yes.
So I didn't really make the connection actually until I started reading up on the film. So now I got to go back and watch it again,
Yeah. So there was a suggestion that it's a Canon Ash who is lost in time that's trying to warn people. So yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
So also the power's gone out. So this incantation kind of gets to the mother, right? And she starts acting weird. Now, this is the one where I was saying I felt like it didn't quite feel like Evil Dead. It felt more like a possession film than an Evil Dead film at this point.
Oh, like when she's walking to the elevator?
She was just acting possessed rather than Evil Dead-y. And I was thinking, is he going to stay? But no, it quickly transitions to the Evil Dead, much more of an Evil Dead vibe. But I was just wondering, it wasn't a problem. I just felt that, I felt like
I agree.
More like The Exorcist than The Evil Dead.
Yes, The Exorcist is exactly what I thought of too, and it does have a bit of that vibe for a good maybe 10-15 minutes.
10-15 minutes, yeah.
And
until they
and
start realising what they got on their hands.
Right. And then it gets back on track very quickly. But I like the way they did it. I think the whole just sort of demonic sort of possession thing kind of works for a few minutes. It's, something a little more creepy. And man, the way that she gets possessed, I won't go into great detail just so you can see it for yourself, audience. But oh man, it's brutal.
I feel like there was some deliberate nods to The Exorcist, actually. I feel like that, because there was a few nods to other films in this, I think.
Yeah,
or I might just be reading too much into it. But there was definitely references to the older Evil Dead films as well.
Yeah.
Now, they're kind of stuck there because the elevator's broke, the stairs are collapsed, so they can't figure out how to get out. That's kind of a problem.
And they're up on, I think is it the top floor they're on? They're high up there.
They're near the top, yeah. But Ellie, who is the possessed mother, he kind of starts attacking them.
Yeah,
but they lock her outside. But then she starts fighting. And there's all sorts of scenes going on here. There's one point where she kind of bites out someone's eyeball and spits it at someone who accidentally swallows it, which is obviously a direct reference to the second movie.
Yeah, but so brutal, man.
Yeah, it did make me laugh though, because the reference and it was just came out of nowhere. It was just so gross. So it was like a proper gross out, Evil Dead gross out moment. That's the sort of, when we say there's laughs, those are the sorts of laughs we're talking about.
Exactly. Like very morbid humor, kind of Evil Dead style, right?
Yeah, and a neighbour also turns up with a shotgun and starts trying to fight, but he doesn't last very long. But there is a shotgun lying in the hallway. And there's all sorts of stuff going on. Danny is very upset at this point because he realises what he did has summoned whatever it is.
He's like, if I wouldn't have played the record, but he had no clue, unfortunately, and a little bit too late now, because things have pretty much gone to hell with their mother, and I mean they do the emotional stuff really good in this film too, which that is one thing I feel that Evil Dead 1 kind of does a little bit better, because the second film is so focused on the humor, which is not a bad thing, but I think that it was nice that they were really able to build these characters up and give you a sense that we can relate to these people. Because at first I'm thinking, I don't know, like, are these characters going to be likable? At first, it doesn't really seem like it, but then as the film rolls on, we kind of figure out why they're sort of the way they are, with the dad leaving and everything, and then also, just everything going on in their lives. They have to move out of this apartment. It's being condemned soon, so they've got all sorts of terrible stuff going on, and then you find out, of course, this, as we get to know them, that they're just good, normal people going through life's challenges.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I agree. The emotional stuff was done well, and we haven't really seen that apart from 1 and 4.
Yes,
right? Those are the only ones that really touch on that. The others are too goofy for that kind of thing.
Yeah, they just kind of get right to it,
Yeah. Now, both the teenagers kind of get injured when Ellie attacks, but the daughter, who's Bridget, starts to also turn, and we have a really nasty scene where she talks about bugs in her tummy and getting rid of them, and she's eating glass.
Yeah.
You see the glass passing down her throat, and
I mean, brutal stuff. Yeah,
and the suggestion being she knows her aunt is pregnant, and she's talking about the unborn baby as well, right? There's kind of
they keep
it's
coming
an
back
ominous
to that.
tone about that. The Evil Dead kind of start getting obsessed about it through this film. So, and that's a nasty turn as well.
It really is, man. Oof.
Yeah,
uncomfortable.
and there's all sorts of violence, blood, everything. But even the little girl gets totally covered in blood throughout quite major parts of this film.
I do have it here, Mark. 1,717 gallons of fake blood were used.
Amazing.
In this film.
I can believe it. I think you see it all on the screen there.
For our UK viewers, that's 6,500 liters.
Yeah. No, it's all right. We understand gallons.
Okay, good. You guys are smarter than us. We only understand the one thing. So
yeah, no, we have to deal with both.
I apologize.
Yeah, that's okay. But our younger listeners probably know liters way better. Anyway, so also casting the little girl when her sister attacks her, Evil Dead's version of her sister. Cassie accidentally sticks a broom or holds up a broom handle and it gets stuck through her sister's head, which is like, whoa. So Beth, the pregnant aunt, listens to the third record, which tells them how to get rid of the Deadites. But then also, that it didn't work, and the Allies. Basically, it turns out the only way they could stop this is total bodily dismemberment,
right?
Which I think is a phrase from the first film. Specifically,
because they mention, like, even when they're cut up, they're still going to come after you, which of course we know from the second film. Well, in first film too, limbs will still be used against them if they are able to move at all. So
that's right. So Bridget's attacking. She stabs Danny. We also get a scene where Beth is sitting. I can't remember what she's doing, but she's sitting kind of contemplating things. But we see in the background, Ellie's worked out a way to get into the apartment, and she's crawling along the wall towards her. It's kind of tense, right? Kind of tense. Also, I have to say they do use the old, very famous Evil Dead, and in fact, all a horror kind of trope, which is using something like a little rhyme or a nursery rhyme or a little ditty or some sort of song, doggerel, as a way of, bringing a horrific element. And I mean, this has been in horror since the earliest one I can remember is there's a German film called M with Peter Lorre, where he's like a child killer.
Oh yeah, I've seen that one.
Uses like little sort of nursery rhymes in it. And if you think about something like The Innocents, that has a little nursery rhyme. Freddy Krueger uses it all the time.
Indeed.
Doesn't he? And I remember we reviewed a film ages ago called Last Shift. That used that sort of trope too, and this does it as well. And it's a very effective. It's a thing in horror, right? It works quite well, and she's kind of doing that. And there is one nasty bit where she's the main Deadite reverts to the mother's voice and says to the little girl, "Oh, I'm all right now. Let me in. Please open the door," and all this. And the little girl's a little girl, right? So she doesn't know any better. So that's how she gets back in.
Ooh. And then, of course, you have multiple Deadites to deal with. So
yeah, so essentially, they've killed the neighbours and slaughtered everyone. They're trying to get out. So what? Now there's 3 of them, right? There's Ellie, Bridget, and Danny as Deadites. And there's just Beth and the little girl Cassie trying to deal with this, right?
Yeah. I was thinking, like, man, are any of them going to make it through by this point? Oh, and just want to go back really quick, Mark, to when their neighbors are kind of fighting the mother Deadite. The sister, she peeks through the keyhole, not the keyhole, but the little. I guess you call it
the loophole. Yeah.
The loophole. There you go. And I mean, I thought that shot was really cool because you see kind of her point of view, and so you're seeing like the neighbor shoot the shotgun at the mom, and just all this
and looking around like he does not know what's going on. Of course he doesn't. He wouldn't. What? It's mad. It's total madness. How would you know? And he's holding up his shotgun. Then we see him get thrown back, and then we see the Deadite come on and start looking back through the peephole, right? And stuff like that. It's very cool, that whole scene. Very well shot, wasn't it?
So well done. And I will say that is consistent throughout this movie. I thought everything was well shot. It looks just amazing. I mean, just 5 stars on the special effects alone,
Yes, yeah, really good. Like, at this point, the Deadites kind of weirdly merge into one thing. One creature. So it's got 3 heads. Now, this is weird. This kind of made me think of Hellraiser.
Yeah, this was weird. And I wanted to definitely get your impression on this because I wasn't totally sure how I felt about that. I was like, it's different, but it's not... I guess I didn't feel like it was Evil Dead.
Yeah, it was odd. It didn't spoil it in any way. It didn't spoil it in any way.
Didn't. No.
But it didn't feel Evil Dead. It felt, like I say, Hellraiser or possibly Freddy Krueger. It's more like a Dream Logic thing than a Evil Dead thing. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, Hellraiser for sure. I got those vibes with the 3-person.
There was a couple of nods to other Evil Dead films, and I'm apart from the Eyeball one, I'm at a loss to think of any. But I definitely, while I was watching it, I was thinking, oh yeah, that's a nod to this scene and stuff like that. There was one bit though where they're in an elevator filling with blood.
Oh yes,
and
absolutely.
when the doors open, the blood goes out, which made me think of The Shining. That is a shot from The Shining,
right?
Yeah.
That shot was really well done too, or that sequence was really well done because they're going down, but the blood filling up in the elevator takes a little bit, and I honestly I guess in my mind I assumed, okay, well they probably made it to the bottom. How are they going to get out of this? And then the grate of the upper elevator gets moved, and you see more Deadites up there, or the Deadite creature, I should say, and you're just like, oh, okay, they're really screwed. There's no way they can get out of this. And so by then, I think they've intentionally sort of tricked the audience into thinking like, okay, they're at the bottom floor already. And then it opens up suddenly, and you get the blood flowing through
and a little girl and a woman just being swept along in this torrent of blood.
Yeah.
And there's blood absolutely everywhere.
Very clever, though, the way they do a lot of these sequences. That's one of the most clever, I think, though, in the film.
Yeah, and then at one point, and I was a bit, I guess the chainsaw is the obvious reference, right?
Right.
The obvious reference. Chainsaws are a thing in The Evil Dead, of course.
Oh, just a little.
Especially when Ash is involved. So a chainsaw comes from somewhere, and there's also, is it like a wood chipper? I'm not quite sure what it is.
I think it was some kind of wood chipper. I mean, I know they even sort of notice it at the beginning of the film, kind of as a prelude, but yeah, some kind of construction device that's there that they know they can sort of use.
Yeah, and there's basically a massive fight, and eventually, no, actually, the weird composite creature, the main head gets cut off, and essentially it goes. The rest of it goes into the wood chipper, right?
Yeah.
So, and the head is still taunting. The head alone is just still taunting Beth.
Yeah.
But does she just kick it
Yep.
into the wood chipper and disintegrate it? So
Yeah,
there
she
you go.
says she calls her something like baby boo or something, and she's like, "No one calls me that but my sister." And then she
Sister,
kicks her
boom.
head into the wood
That's
chipper,
right, yeah.
and I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
nice."
Which, when it comes to wood chippers, I was thinking of, what's it? You know, Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Right? There's a bit of wood
Yes,
chipper action in that
indeed.
too. So that's kind of the end of the film. Well, the little girl and the aunt get away. Beth and Cassie get away. But we then see a shot the next morning in this car park in a right state where Jessica, who was right at the beginning, the woman who gets possessed, walking in from somewhere, like she's not affected by the earthquake, and she sees all this mayhem. But then we see her, you know, the traditional Evil Dead shot of something flowing towards her as she turns and screams. So again, you know, that's the So that's how it tells the beginning. She got possessed by the Evil Dead at that point. All right.
Yeah, very cool way to tie it all up. I like that final sequence a lot. I thought it was done well. And again, I just, you know, I was so into what was going on in the film, I had pretty much forgotten about the beginning sequence, which I feel like is always kind of the sign of a good film. If you're so invested, you're like, okay, I don't even remember this thing that's supposed to tie up, you know.
Yeah.
But then when it comes back around, you're like, okay, they did do it, you know, which is nice. But man, what a really great film. I enjoyed it. You know, I think
it was scary. It was, and there was enough laughs in it, Evil Dead style laughs, you know, morbid laughs. That it worked because that's what the Evil Dead's about, kind of thing. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed this. Written by Lee Cronin too. I'm
actually now I want to go back and check out some of his films. I have seen some Irish horror before, and what I have seen, I've been very impressed with. I can't think of the name of it right off, of course. But
there's Grabbers, isn't there? There's Grabbers where basically to stop it being possessed by or attacked by aliens, they have to stay drunk. The whole town has to stay drunk.
That's a great one.
Kind of fun.
There's one about vampires. It's on Shudder, I believe, and you know it's like the town vampire kind of legend and everything. It was really well done too.
Okay.
And I cannot think of the name of it, but I guarantee you can find it on Shudder.
Okay.
And I'm sure someone's...
well, I subscribe to Shudder. Shudder's one of my favourites. Shudder and Disney are my two favourites for streaming.
What a contrast there, Mark.
Well, Disney's got some great stuff, you know, as well. Because they have Stars, which has Ash versus the Evil Dead. That's on Disney Plus, believe it or not.
How ironic. See, over here, you know, you have to have Stars. And I think you can get Stars with Hulu, but I don't think you can get it with Disney Plus here.
Oh, we're just lucky then. We're just lucky.
Yeah. But I think
and Walking Dead's on Disney too. And, you know, whether you like it or not, that is horror.
That's great.
And things like that. One thing I have against this film, and it's not specifically against the film, but on the wiki it says this, which is once this got announced, they scrapped plans for direct sequels to The Evil Dead from 2013, which I would have liked to have seen.
Yeah, me too.
And Army of Darkness. So, yes, I definitely would have liked to have seen the sequel to Army of Darkness.
Right?
And a fourth season of Ash vs. Evil Dead. So this shut down a lot of stuff that I would have liked to have seen. However, you can't really hold it against the film. That's production, isn't it? That's kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I have to be honest. I'm kind of not like. Actually, I'm really surprised that Ash vs. Evil Dead had 3 seasons because of the very high production values. I mean, every episode was like a movie almost.
Yeah, and they were great fun, weren't they? They were really solid.
So good. But
just watching the whole show, though, makes me realise how Lucy Lawless never changes. She's unbelievable.
I think she is a real-life vampire.
Yeah. She's in so many good things. She's in Ash vs. Evil Dead, X-Files, Parks and Rec, Xena, you know, and it goes on
Warrior
and on.
Princess.
But, you know, it's... anyway, I'm getting diverted off there. But I would have liked to have seen stuff about all of those. All of those would have been great. But this was fine too.
Yeah, you know, I have to say, I think at this point, the Evil Dead franchise is probably big enough to where they still could go back and do some of that stuff. And I think fans would be perfectly okay with it. You know, like, hey, one year we have an Evil Dead franchise with these characters, and then the next, year we have another one with with characters from the previous film or something like that. I don't know if they'll do that or if that's in the works or anything. But the film did pretty well at the box office, especially
I hope it's done well enough to get more made. That'd be great.
I do too, because I'm not sure how much it costs to make, and I don't believe I could ever find that information.
Well, the fact they use practical would suggest it probably doesn't cost as much as it would otherwise, but you never know. You never know with these things.
You never know. Yeah.
Apparently the budget was 19 million.
Oh, okay. That's pretty good.
The box office so far is 146 million. So that is clearly a success.
Oh, yeah, that is
clearly a success.
So I think that, it'll probably, hopefully have a sequel, or at the very least we'll get more Evil Dead. And I hope it's sooner rather than later,
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, so we both enjoyed this film greatly. It wasn't top tier, but it was pretty solid.
Very good, though. Very good.
Like I say, I feel like this might, even though I've only give it 3.5, this might be in the top 5. So if it is, the score's going to go up, obviously. But I've got to rewatch to be sure, and compare it to some of the other stuff around too, obviously.
And my thing is, I probably, I have to judge it as far as my score goes on previous Evil Dead films, because it's a part of that franchise. Yeah. And for me, 1 is the best, and 2 is really equal. Honestly, it's hard for me to pick between 1 and 2. I love both. And I mean, I also, I like the third one. I like everything that is in this franchise. And so it's so hard for me to pick. It's like picking your favorite child almost, It's like I can't choose.
Yeah.
But this one's really good, and I think we both recommend it, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, this is a strong recommend for me.
Yeah.
I have to say, there isn't any particular horror I'm particularly waiting on this year, apart from the continuation of the X and Pearl franchise, when the next film for that is called Maxine, which I think is due to come out in 2023.
Oh, man, I got to see that one.
Given the strength, X was great, but Pearl was fantastic.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to seeing Maxine when it comes. And apparently it's... Hold on, I was going to say it was shown. No, it was announced in 2022, Maxine.
I didn't realize that they were moving forward with that franchise so quickly.
There's some images available of Mia Goth in as the character. In it. I'm not sure if she's the character. But Mia Goth is also in it, which is great.
I look forward to that.
Yeah, so we'll see when it comes out.
Oh, Maxine with the triple X.
Triple X, yes, I should have said. Yeah.
So we're probably going back
I guess it's the X franchise. I don't really know what it's called, to be honest. It's called the X Trilogy.
Yeah.
So that's it. That'll be it.
I'm
excited. Oh my God, Kevin Bacon's in it. How about that?
Oh, wow.
Yes.
I'm surprised, but you know what? If he's going to be in any kind of film, this is probably the one for him.
Yeah. So
unannounced date from, of course, A24 Studios, and man, A24 has done some great stuff. Mark, just
they
continually
definitely have.
Yeah, they continue to put out quality stuff.
Yeah, they take pride in their work. Clearly, the sort of quality their stuff they're producing. The Witch, unbelievable.
Oh yeah, one of my
Midsummer was something else. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Wow, what could you say? You know what I mean?
All top quality.
Yeah, some of it I'm not. Hereditary. I was caught. It wasn't my thing.
It wasn't terrible, but it was alright.
It was a bit overrated, but but their batting level is pretty damn high. So that's good to be aware of, right? You can kind of trust it. Anyway, exactly. Evil Dead Rise, strong for me. Yeah,
strong for me as well. And man, we're looking forward to covering more on the podcast. I think we already have a plan for the next one. So looking forward to that. And it is also, believe it or not, a 20. You know what? Actually, it might be a 2022 film. I'm not 100% sure, but it's recent. So we are getting into some recent horror as well as.
Oh yeah, our next film is a 2022 horror. So it is one that we talked about on the big one we did.
Yes.
It is one of those. But we won't spoil anymore. We will post in about a week. Well, a few days. well, a week before we record, we'll post that's what we're covering, and we'll try and see if we get some feedback on that. So
yeah, absolutely. And I do want to mention, I did a little poll on, asking people, hey, do you want to bring or would you be interested in audio voice files, like in an audio voice line? And that's something I am actively looking into. There's different ways to do it. Back in the day, it was like Google Voice, I think we used, or something like that. But
what, to send us
voicemail? Yeah.
Well, the easiest thing is to get an email account, and you can honestly on your phone. There's all sorts of apps just to record an MP3 and send it in. Yeah. Let's talk about it offline. And
we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But I do want to let our listeners know that we are wanting to get more interactivity back into the show, and it's something we always have strived for. But you guys know how life is.
Well, we're building from a sort of hiatus for various reasons, aren't we?
Yeah,
so,
we are.
We're putting out reasonably frequent content, apart from the 2022 special, which took months to get ready.
To be ready for. You watched so many films for that. I'm like, man, I felt like I watched a lot, but compared to you, I watched nothing.
You know what? I enjoyed it.
And that's what matters, And I feel like as long as we continue to enjoy the horror franchise, franchises and everything, we'll keep doing this show for the long haul.
Yeah, I do watch. I mean, I have to say, I watch other horror. I don't just watch about this. Believe it or not, I've got time to watch other horror. Oh, for example, last night I watched an awesome one of the best Amicus movies of when they do episodic. They're portmanteau films with Tales from the Crypt.
There you go.
Which is one of the ones
Great
where they
film.
borrowed from the original EC Comics, and it's I think it's the best one. One of the best ones. Creepshow still takes it for me, but it's got 5 segments and they're all really good.
I love that film. Love that one.
I'm thinking we might want to cover that for one of our Christmas episodes, because one of the segments is set at Christmas, so we could do it for that.
I know the one you're talking about.
I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed that. But I'm always watching horror stuff. Always. So,
you can't go wrong with horror. I watch a lot of it too.
It makes me wonder, should we start having, what is it, on my podcast we call it the comfy chair, which is we just review what we've done for the month, and we could kind of occasionally do those kind of episodes.
Yeah, I feel like that's
we cover the stuff that we don't talk about on the main podcast, but the horror stuff that we've also done. And that could be fun too, but we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
We will. Yeah, there's just so much great horror now. It's almost hard to fit it all in. And I love talking about one title like this, but man, there's so much to talk about, Mark.
Indeed, and what puts off our game a bit is Becky not being able to participate. We really miss her. I know we don't talk about. Well, we occasionally mention it, but we do miss Becky quite a lot.
We do. Sending out good vibes and just hoping everything is well.
Yeah. Okay, let's wind out there. What do you reckon? Do you want to lead us out?
Well, you know what? Let's throw it to Dracula to lead us out this time, Mark.
Okay, no. Should we say bye-bye?
Yeah,
bye-bye.
Till the next time on United Nations of Horror.
The United Nations of Horror is a podcast about all things horror. From thrillers of yesteryear to today's modern horror, we are here to present fun and intelligent conversation about the genre films we love. Join us and please help spread the word about the United Nations of Horror podcast and Videocast to horror fans across the globe. Find the podcast on all fine podcasting services. Join us on Facebook by simply going to facebook.com and entering in United Nations of Horror. You can also find us on YouTube by going to youtube.com and searching for United Nations of Horror podcast.